Mr. Anderton, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
It's been, I guess, about 24 years since your maiden speech. I don't know if you recall all the content
yes,
of
I've read
that.
it a few times just to see that I'm still on track.
Quite some years ago. Many New Zealanders think of you as a nice guy. Nice face, nice guy, we trust him. What makes or breaks a great politician?
I don't know that I know the answer to that, because there are a lot of, quote, great politicians who are well known that I wouldn't admire all that much. They're still great in the sense they're in the history books. But if you look at their lives and look at what they did and so on, I wouldn't want to emulate them. I can only speak for myself. I went into politics, I know for sure, hand on heart, because I cared about people who weren't able, in the normal course of events, to represent themselves. They weren't articulate enough, they weren't, they didn't have the time. They're getting up at 6 in the morning and going to work and working hard and getting home and almost, flopping into bed, and going to meetings and trying to battle City Hall wasn't part of the milieu. And because I'd had a good education under a government that promoted free education for the first time in New Zealand's history, I had good health care, I was in good health, and I was the first generation of New Zealanders who had free health care. I'd had a decent education. I'd been to training college and been a teacher, I'd been to university, and I had all these opportunities laid at my feet, and I felt morally obliged, literally morally obliged, to give something back to the country that had been so good to me.
When many people think of you, they also automatically think Kiwi Bank. Will that be your greatest legacy?
Well, it probably will, because it'll be going long after I'm gone, I'm sure of it. And someone one day will say, where did this all come from? What was that guy's name? Someone, I can't remember who he was, but someone had this idea. Well, yeah, and in a way, it epitomises a particular time in my life where I had to make a stand. I mean, I left the Labour Party, which was a huge call for me. I'd been a member for 26 years. I'd been the president of it. I'd been on the national executive. I'd been on the regional executive. I'd worked full time for it. So to leave it, what was going on here? Well, they did something that I could not, in conscience, countenance, and that was they set up all of the assets of New Zealand for sale to anybody who'd buy them at a fire sale price. So, for example, Telecom was sold for $4 billion when independently audited and assessed it was worth over $10 billion. And so we gave away, when Telecom was sold, the two American corporations who bought it, Bell Atlantic and Ameritech, took $10 billion out of New Zealand tax-free capital gain. That was unconscionable in my view, and I wasn't going to tolerate it, and I said, that's enough for me, I'm gone. And I stood against asset sales. The irony is that I'm in a government now with people who were around when they sold it, and they didn't leave, and I did, and we're now buying them back.
Buying them back again.
The railways and there in New Zealand, and I got their agreement to form Kiwi Bank to counter all the Australian banks, or Australian-owned banks, that were closing branches all over the place. There were 1,300 branches closed while I was in government opposition. The interesting thing, since we formed Kiwi Bank, not one single branch of a bank anywhere in New Zealand is closed. It's having gone through all this and had the wisdom to see it through, the last thing I want to see is all the efforts we've made. Kiwi Bank sold? For goodness sake, I mean, we've just put it into place, and 650,000, increasing by 2,000 a week, have joined it. It's the strongest retail bank in terms of outlets in the country. And I just think, why would I actually stand aside and let people get away with that? Not on my watch, they'll have to wait till I'm dead.
You've also done quite a lot of work too, as a politician, to help youth, troubled youth, and drug issues, like you've led the charge to help ban party pills.
Oh, and methamphetamine.
And methamphetamines.
Yeah. And alcohol too.
And alcohol.
And tobacco.
And tobacco. Where do we stand today? Have you achieved what you've hoped to achieve in these areas?
No, I haven't. These are very serious issues, and to some extent the image of drugs is mixed and somewhat hypocritical. Hand on heart, the worst drug problem we have in New Zealand is alcohol, by a country mile. I was talking to the drug squad in Canterbury recently, and I said to them, well, hand on heart again, what is the worst drug you have to deal with? What is the worst problem that's created for you about all the drugs that you've got in front of you? They said, oh, no question, alcohol. 90%, they told me, of what the police deal with in violent crime and criminal behaviour is caused by alcohol abuse. if you look at tobacco, for example, we sell that at corner dairies. 4,700 New Zealanders die each year from smoking tobacco. But because tobacco is a kind of semi-accepted, less so now than before, that's true, and alcohol is a sort of drug of choice of an overwhelming number of New Zealanders, then we kind of just slip that aside because it's convenient not to deal with it. And it's hard for governments to take up these causes. I was opposed to the age of drinking being lowered. I thought that was a very bad message. We've proposed, my party, the Progressive Party's posed to Parliament to raise the age, and we were defeated. I think it'll come back again. I'm sure that the road toll, the deaths through alcohol of young people and all the rest of it, and the serious injuries. We only look at the deaths, but we should look at the serious injuries. 500 people killed on the roads, but 30,000 seriously injured. 30,000. That's more in 1 year than all the people that have been injured in most of the wars we've fought in. I care about young people. I often speak to young audiences, and they say to me, "Why are you so opposed to this?" I say, "Well, you know, when I was your age, and you probably hate people saying that, I didn't drink at all. And I used to go to parties with my guitar, and I'd play the guitar all night. And I had such a great time, people used to think I was drunk." And they'd fill up my glass, and I'd leave it there all night, and they'd come along and say, "Oh, you want it?" No, I'm fine. I never touched it. But because I was having such a good time and I was singing and all this, people assumed you had to be drunk to do that. I know you don't. I lived my whole life as a teenager as a star of the party, playing my guitar and having a great time, never touched a drop of alcohol. You've got hormones coursing through your veins that I'd die for. You don't need this other stuff. Have a great time as a young person with everything you've been given. Forget about drugs, forget about alcohol. It's a waste of space for you. You're only going to pour stuff into your body that's going to make you less of a person than if you did without it. That's my message to them. And I think my care and concern about people is what drives me in these things. It's not being a kind of come to work on Monday at Parliament and figure out how many things I can ban today. I'm not into that. But I see the problems of this at my electorate office. I have parents in tears, kids whose lives have been wiped out, families who've been destroyed by drugs and alcohol. And you can't live through all that and say, "Oh, it's all right, don't worry about it, just chill out, man, she'll be okay." It's just rubbish. And someone has to stand up and say that.
You mentioned classical guitar, and of course your other hobbies are well documented: cricket, golf and chess. You love a game of chess.
Yes.
The elections, will it be checkmate for Helen Clark or checkmate for John Key?
Well, I've always said to Helen, and we worked closely together, we were great friends. Helen was married at my house, actually. But we had a falling out over the Labor Party period. But we've worked professionally and closely. And I noticed the polls are starting to close. That doesn't surprise me. I think Helen Clark is an incredible campaign leader. She'll run a magnificent campaign. John Key is untested under this pressure. You only have to make 1 or 2 mistakes in a row, as National have shown recently, and it all adds up cumulatively, and then people make a decision. Why would I trust the country to someone or some group of people who keep making mistakes? Now, it's easy to make mistakes. It's hard, particularly for the Prime Minister, to be on show day after day, year after year, and make as few mistakes as Helen Clark has made. And when you come down to the crunch, there's going to be some decisions made by people about where they want the country to go and who they want to control. So this is not over by a long shot. As I say, my reason for standing this time is not so much that I need it. I don't. I'd quite like to go back and play my classical guitar and play a bit of chess and get on the golf course a bit more. But the call of needing to make a difference and be part of a government that has made a difference and stand up to the challenge of people who say, "Oh, it's all gone to hell in a handcart," when I know that when I was fighting in the 80s about what policies were being led by Roger Douglas and co, who's come back, it's like Nightmare on Elm Street 3 to me, we had 235,000 jobless people in this country. Now you can almost count them on the fingers of a couple of hands. I mean, we have made an enormous difference, and I don't want to give that up. So I'm there at the barricades when this fight is being fought, and I'll be in the front line.
Mr. Anderton, thank you very much for joining us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.